they was not able to get her out of the vehicle. The fire was so hot they couldn't get to the vehicle to get her out. So she ended up being burned alive. He got out of his vehicle and he started running, trying to climb over the wall. He was on probation a couple of times for domestic violence, and he done some county jail time. He had several of those cases. It also came out that he had one of the baby mamas was only 15. One of the victims was a niece of his that was 9 years old, and her friend that was 11 years old.
Behind my badge is a heart like yours. I bleed, I think, I love, and yes, I can be killed. And although I am but one man, I have thousands of brothers and sisters who are the same as me. We stand watch together, a thin blue line, protecting the prey from the predators, the good from the bad. We are the police.
Is in pursuit of a code 37 vehicle west on
Tanya Childress, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
We're here to talk about your daughter's case. Your daughter Jennifer Chavis. Would you mind kind of giving us a little bit of an overview of what happened to her and why you're here?
My daughter was killed by a drunk driver April the 2nd of 2022. She was a police officer. She was killed while on duty. She was, that particular day, there was a call that came in to their dispatchers that someone was driving in and out of their lane, and it was a possible drunk driver. And Jennifer, she answered the call. She positioned her vehicle there on the side of the road, out of traffic, where she could intercept this person as he was coming up there on the beltway. So, instead of her intercepting him, he goes over 4 lanes of traffic and he hits her from behind in his work truck. He was driving a F-550, which also had a equipment on the back, one of those toolbox. It also had a welding machine on the back and some kind of little crane bucket thing on the back also. So it was double cab, heavy duty truck that hit her Tahoe, and her Tahoe, it burst into flames on impact. And they was not able to get her out of the vehicle because of the fire. It was so intense because when his vehicle hit the back of her Tahoe, it hit the gas tank, and that's what exploded. And the fire was so hot, none of the officers that responded to the scene and none of the people that was trying there as innocent bystanders, they couldn't get to the vehicle to get her out. So she ended up being burned alive there in her vehicle. because nobody could get her out.
I'm so sorry. And
That's so sad.
this gentleman, Adolfo Serrano, he was intoxicated at the time, correct?
Yes, he was. He was four times over the
Four
limit.
times?
Yes. And at the time of his lab drawn, he was a 0.16. He was twice over the limit.
Yeah.
Because after he hit my daughter and the fire, her vehicle, it exploded, he got out of his vehicle and he started running away, trying to climb over the wall of that cement barrier that divides the highways. He was trying to run from the crash scene that he had caused. And so the people that was there who saw him, they apprehended him and held him there until law enforcement got there. And then law enforcement put him into one of their patrol cars, and he didn't get taken out from the scene because initially this happened. It was broad daylight when this happened. It happened like between 5:30 and 6:45, so it was still daylight, nice sunny day, and but they put him in a vehicle, and they were trying to still get the fire put out and still trying to get my daughter out of the burning vehicle. And they had put him in the vehicle where he wouldn't escape like he was trying to do. But about time they got him to the hospital to get his labs drawn, it was like 10 o'clock. You're talking 4 hours later. Mm-hmm. So, but that information came out during the trial that he was 4 times over the limit.
Wow.
When he hit
And
her.
you said this was during daylight, so around what time was it?
Yeah, it was like between 5:30 and 6:45 when this happened, because they showed the video and it was daylight. It was broad daylight.
And there had been, I think for over 10 minutes, there had been getting calls in. The police had been getting calls in, correct? And that's
he drove
other
20
drivers.
miles.
He drove 20 miles.
20 miles before he hit her.
Wow.
20 miles, because the initial video that this guy, the one who called it in, he followed him. He followed him from precinct 8 all the way over to precinct 7, that area. So he had made the call when they were coming from Pasadena area. And when he had made the call, but it was 20 miles. 20 miles he was behind that guy all the way up into the crash.
Wow. That's unbelievable. And he, if I'm not mistaken, he also had a prior DWI arrest.
Yes, he had 2.
He had 2. Mm-hmm. Do you know about how long ago those were?
I want to say he had a first DWI back in like the late 2000s, somewhere around about 2008, 2009. Mm-hmm. He had a prior
and I have
DWI.
one here in 2014. I have one here that it says in 2014.
Yeah, and he had that one, and that one was with a child. He also had his child in the vehicle with him during that time.
Wow. And I think that's a big reason why it's so important to get stories like this out, because when someone has a history like that, I think it's very clear that we need to send a stronger message for people who drive drunk, because typically we find that people who end up killing people in DWI related incidences, almost all the time they have prior arrests. They have prior, they've been caught before. It's almost never their first time, right?
That's true.
And so that's just another case, another example for why we need to send, a stronger message.
I've seen a lot of times too where they might not have the DWI on their record. It might, the charges may have changed, or they got it pled down to a reckless driving, obstructing a highway, something like that, and the DWI doesn't show up because in his case, the first DWI was there, but I don't know what happened, what was the disposition on it, but the next one, sure enough, it was a DWI, and also it was a child involved, so it was a state jail, but I don't know what was the disposition on that, if he just got probation for it and completed it or not. But a lot of times, yes, the DWIs, they're not recorded also as DWIs. And you see so many times where, it's not that person's first time being behind the wheel of a car drunk. And then it's our loved ones that are taken away.
And I don't think people understand how dangerous it is to just be on our roads, right? To be out here in Houston. Houston is one of the deadliest cities in the world for, DWI and just overall fatal crashes. And every single time that we let someone off easily with the DWI, they're going to continue to reoffend. Every time that they know that they're not really going to be held accountable, they're probably just going to get a slap on the wrist. It's going to make it so much easier for them to keep making these decisions. And that's really, again, why we're trying to have a bigger platform for this, and we're trying to make sure that we get these stories out and that we show the impact that it has, because it's not just losing your family member, it's all the trauma that comes after the fact, right? It's the trial. These trials, we've spoken to attorneys and they've told us that DWI cases are typically the most complicated cases for them to try. They're very, very difficult. And so that's a lot of extra stress on the family, right?
Yes.
We have all in this room experienced that, how terrible that process can be. And so I know you guys, literally, it's been a matter of weeks since y'all finished trial and he got convicted. Am I correct?
Yes.
And when did trial start, and how was that process for you guys?
It started March the 31st, and
So how long did it take to get to trial?
the whole process, because our case was reset. The case was reset a couple of times, and I don't really remember when the first date that was set, but then it was for sure supposed to have went before the courts August the 19th, and it didn't. And then it was, well, if y'all want us to go ahead and go through, get it over with, because the holidays were coming up and the end of the year. And the prosecutors was like, we could squeeze y'all in. And, no, I did not want to be squeezed in.
No.
Because it's, like you said, that's a very stressful time going through that process. And it's a one shot. You get that one shot at getting things right and getting the justice that your loved one really and truly deserves. We see a lot of times these cases where the person gets probation probation shouldn't be an option
It really
when
shouldn't.
somebody has lost a life.
Yeah,
You
it's
know,
disgusting.
I just, that just shouldn't be on the table. It shouldn't be on the table. When a person has lost their life behind somebody doing something, driving while you're under the influence of alcohol or drugs, probation shouldn't be an option because we are well aware that drinking and driving is against the law. They're making a choice to do that. But the person who's being, the victim, who's, losing their life or having the injuries, they don't have a choice. You know, Jennifer, she didn't have a choice. So I just don't feel like there should be a choice where the defendant is asking for probation when he has taken a loved one. You have wrecked the whole family. Have sent a whole family into a tailspin.
And we've spoken to enough people where we kind of see a pattern with people who find themselves in these situations. Every time that they end up getting convicted, they go through this process. Most of them never take accountability. It was an accident, it wasn't their fault, this and that. They make up all kinds of lies. I know it happened in our case. We experienced that a lot. Basically at every single point that she had, she decided to lie versus tell the truth. And I'm sure you guys had a similar experience. Could you tell us a little bit about what you guys found out about him, the kind of person he was during the trial, and how did that go?
Yeah, we just it was so much in that trial that came out, so much information that some things we knew, some things that we didn't know. We know that he had the prior DWIs. We know a little bit about, because some of the stuff also came out on the news about his domestic violence. He had served some time in prison for domestic violence. He had several different baby mamas, and all of the baby mamas had been victims of domestic violence, where the cops were called and reports was done, and offense reports. He was on probation a couple of times for domestic violence, and he done some county jail time for domestic violence. He had several of those cases. It also came out that he had one of the baby mamas was only 15.
Oh, wow.
15 when she got pregnant for him. So, and he was over age, 20 years old, 19, 20 years old. So, then it was another incident that came out, because that was that case was investigated as a sexual assault, but it never did come to court. But it was investigated. He was investigated, and it was a sexual assault because of her age. But I guess due to the victim being uncooperative, so it never did come to court. But then in his 20s, he was also, there was a couple of cases for child molestation where one of the victims was a niece of his that was 9 years old, and her friend that was 11 years old. So a lot of this stuff came out, in the punishment phase, and some of the stuff we didn't even know, and it's like, you find out so much, and these people, no, they don't show no remorse, and they don't want to go to jail, they don't want to be locked up, they don't want to take accountability for what they've done at all, and to sit and go through that, it's heartbreaking. It really is, to know that that's the kind of person who took your family member's life.
I can relate to that. It was the same situation with us. The lady got 43 years. She thought she could do better with, trial with by jury, and she showed no remorse at all through our trial as well. So I know what you're saying.
Because I think her original plea was probably 25 years, right?
It was 25 years.
That was the original offer she had, 25. If she pled guilty, she would have served 25.
Yes.
And she turned it down, went to trial, knowing we had every bit of evidence against her we could. And she ended up getting 43 years, thinking that she could beat the case, I guess, because she was, from our understanding, she thought that because she was a mom and a woman that she was going to get a lighter sentence and that she was going to get off with it. And throughout the trial, we could tell everything was just about her punishment, what was going to happen to her. There wasn't a single thought towards us, the people who were really, struggling and that really didn't deserve to be in that situation. And again, it seems like it's common practice for people who find themselves in these situations that's how they treat the families. It ends up all being about them and their punishment. How they can just get the least amount of punishment towards them, and it's terrible.
Yeah, in our case, she had a witness that came up, which was a neighbor, and testifying that a 6-year-old had, passed away, from a drunk driver as well. And she was pleading that, she was a good mother, she was a good person, and pretty much putting a number on, our jury to what a life is worth, And so I texted our defense attorney and our DA's office, and I pleaded with them, said, if they're going to allow her to put a number, I want to go. I want to be up there. I want to go on the stand, and I want to give my opinion as well. And I said, a life for a life, Lauren. She gave us a life sentence the day that I received the phone call.
Yes.
And would you know that in her closing statement, that's exactly what she said to the jury. Those were her last words. They came out, a life for a life. Mm-hmm. And I believe that that's what they did because she was 43 years old, 42 at that time. I believe, and within those days, she was going to turn 43. She got a 43-year conviction.
Mm-hmm.
And y'all's guy got life, right?
Yeah.
What were the factors that led to him getting life?
He, the defendant in my daughter's case, he didn't get on the stand until the punishment. So during the trial process, the trial part, before the verdict, he didn't take the stand. He was expecting, I guess his attorneys to do a good job in presenting his case where the jury would find him not guilty. But that didn't happen. The jury found him guilty. And, with the jury, it's always, you just don't know. You never know how it's going to go. And that was my apprehension about everything was, oh my gosh, what if something happened? They get back there and they don't all agree. And, It's a hung jury, mistrial, and all of this here. So, but it was very, very emotional when the jury came back and gave a guilty verdict. And that was like, wow, they see through this stuff that's going on. And then going into the punishment phase, when he did get up there on the stand, it was all my daughter's fault.
Yes.
It wasn't his fault. None of it. The wreck was already there before he got there. There was already a car on the side of the road that was on fire. I don't know what happened. It was already there before I got there. He said that because we listened to all of his phone calls, and on every last one of those phone calls, this guy, he just never showed any kind of remorse. He said if she wouldn't have been playing on her phone and had been paying attention and looking in the rearview mirror, she would have saw this big truck coming behind her, and she could have moved out of my way.
Wow.
She's on the shoulder.
Yeah. Now the deputies had already got up there and testified that when they looked into the vehicle that was on fire that my daughter was in, my daughter had both of her hands on the steering wheel. Both her hands were on the steering wheel. That was her position, waiting for him to come where she could get behind him. But he said she was on her phone, not paying attention. And the deputy that testified said he looked, and there was a silhouette, of her there with both of her hands on the steering wheel. So Jennifer didn't have her phone in her hand. So she was paying attention.
Yeah.
But it was all her fault. And that's what all of the phone calls that was between him and his family, and all of the family that got up there and testified, they all said the same thing. If she wouldn't have been parked where she was parked, she wouldn't have gotten hit. All of those other cars were passing by her. None of those other cars hit her. Only the drunk driver.
Same thing with ours. Same thing with ours.
Only the drunk driver hit her. Everyone else passed her with no problem.
Yeah. And I want to make sure that we also talk a little bit, definitely talk about your daughter and who she was. Everything that I've heard about her, she had an amazing reputation. I heard that she was like my dad, where almost you couldn't really find a person that had anything bad to say about her. So could you kind of get into a little bit about who Jennifer was and the person that she was, and the officer and the servant to her community that she was?
Jennifer was, she was ambitious. She was high-strung with whatever it was that she was doing. She just did it with an excellence, to it. She was very, very helpful to anyone who needed help in any kind of way. She decided when she was 17 in school, her senior year, she signed up for the military. She came home and she told me, Mama, I signed up. And I said, what you talking about, Jennifer? Signed up for what? And she said, For the Army. I'm going to the Army. And, and I told her, I said, why did you do that? We were supposed to talk about it. Why did you sign up, Jennifer? And, she told me, because that's what I want to do when I graduate. I said, yeah, but Jennifer, we were supposed to talk about it first. Whatever she set her mind to, she just did it, and I said, okay. I said, so when are you leaving? And then she had told me that it was right after she was leaving, like a couple of weeks after she finished high school. So it's like, oh, okay. So we're not just going to have any time together. You're going to be gone within a couple of weeks. And she was. So she went to the military for six years, went straight to Iraq. She done some tours over there. She done a lot of traveling. She went to Africa. She went to Paris, Rome. She went to Normandy with President Obama at that time. So she just went a lot of places, did a lot of things. She stayed in Germany a lot. So she was always on the go, always on the move. She believed in education. When she came home, she was working with the veterans because she was a veteran. And she done a lot of work with the Dress for Success. And we do have a little organization a foundation that we put together in her name. And we do, support the Dress for Success for the veterans downtown there in Houston, because that was one of her things that she gave back to them for the veterans, because when she first came home and before she went and, found a job and started working, the veterans kind of, helped her with her wardrobe and helping her, find a job and things like that. So she's always given back to the veterans. She also had put together a organization called Patriotic Pups, and it was to help veterans get service dogs. That's because awesome. When she had gotten her service dog for her PTSD from being in the war in Iraq, she had some problems getting her service dog. And she didn't want veterans to have to go through the problems that she did. So she kind of formed that organization, Patriotic Pups, to help veterans get their service dogs the way that she got hers. So she was just ambitious, doing a lot of things. She ended up going to U of H and getting her bachelor's in criminal justice. She went to University of Houston downtown to the police academy. Then she went to Texas Southern University. She got her master's degree because she wanted to teach. And at the time of her death, she was in the process of getting her PhD. Awesome. So she was just doing the most, but that was just Jennifer. Just doing her thing out there. But it wasn't all about all the time just out there being a cop and, arresting people, giving people tickets and all of that there stuff. She actually, a lot of times when she would, pull someone over for this or that, it was a lot of conversation, a lot of education, teaching, and, listening. One lady, one incident that, they talk about with her is she's remembered for is this lady who had a paper tag. And that's during the time that the paper tags were, a real hot thing that was going on. And, they were to be given tickets and all of this stuff. But Jennifer didn't write a ticket for the lady because the lady, she had gotten her regular license plate, but she didn't know how to put it on. So Jennifer put her plates on for her.
Yeah.
Didn't write her a ticket or anything,
That's nice. Yeah.
Yeah, just give me your plates, I'll put them on. So that's what she did. They're on the side of the road. So she was very, 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 very helpful. And, a lot of people, she helped with the veteran services getting their benefits and stuff because that's not an easy process. But she would take up time with taking people down to the VA, kind of walking through the steps with them, getting them set up with their benefits because it wasn't easy for her. So she wanted to make sure that the next person, had a smoother transition.
Absolutely.
So that's the kind of person she was.
That's great. Can you tell us a little bit about her childhood?
Her as a child.
Yes.
Yeah, like how was she as a kid?
Yeah, Jennifer was something else. And, I'm not going to say that she was the best because she wasn't. I was thinking about her the other day and thinking about something that she did, probably one of those times where she was skipping school in my car and should have been at school and wasn't, and somebody saw her, at the neighbor's house or somewhere there in the neighborhood where she shouldn't have been. She was mischievous.
Sounds like it. Signing up for the army without my mom would have whooped me.
Yeah.
I'd have been more scared of her than the army.
So, she was not always where she should have been, so far as, schooling and stuff like that, because she just kind of done her own thing. But, she was real protective of her little brother and sister, and, they miss her a whole lot, because, that was Mama Junior.
Yeah, that explains the path she took.
Yeah. So, I was a single parent and, she was over them a lot because, I was working. So she was there taking care of the house. Yeah. And, she was the oldest and you're going to mind me. Mama's not here. So I'm the mama.
Yeah. It's always terrible because it always seems like whenever these accidents happen, it always seems like we lose the best people.
Yeah.
And most of the time the person who committed the offense, they walk away just fine because their vehicle is
That's
the one
true.
doing all the damage, so a lot of the times they make it out and it just shatters not only their family, but the family of the victim. And can you just speak to how this has impacted you and how it continues to impact you today? Because like I said, I don't know if people really understand how hard this is to go through.
Yeah. Well, and it does. It just, it just tears people's lives apart, really and truly. It does. I have a lot of problems with anxiety, social anxiety, being out in crowds. I used to not be that way. I used to work for probation, parole. I did that for 17 years, and I worked with the courts. So, you know, I've seen a lot, dealt with a lot of DWIs and, you know, all kind of other offenses, sex offenses and stuff. And, you know, I don't want to go back to doing that kind of work. I don't want to work with that population anymore like I used to want to work with that population. I was on the path of doing LCDC counseling, working with people with substance abuse. You know, I can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
I have a problem with driving and being in crowded spaces. You know, looking in my rearview mirror at, you know, cars coming behind because, you know, my daughter was hit from behind. So that kind of stays, you know,
With
at
you.
my forefront, you know, and I'm sitting there in traffic and wondering, is this person going to slow down? Are they going to hit me? Are they going to go around? So I have that anxiety driving, and you know, it's just really taken a lot out of me, and Jennifer made me a mom. She made me a mother. You know, she was my first. My labor and delivery was not a normal process. You know, so
Tell us a little
It
bit about
just-
that.
it just did not go well, and you know, the labor was prolonged because I don't know, she wouldn't turn or something. You know, I should have known that she was going to be like she is. But I had a difficult birthing process, and you know, the last thing I remember, her heart rate was down in the 40s, and my blood pressure was, you know, almost the top number, almost over 200. It was like 193, and I went into shock, hypervolemic shock with her, and they had to do emergency C-section, and then she had problems afterwards. I had problems afterwards. It was a prolonged hospital stay because, you know, just wasn't nothing going right. Her temperature, they couldn't get her temperature up. I was running fever. It was just a lot getting that girl into the world. You know?
She made you proud every day.
Yeah.
Continues to make you proud.
Yeah, and it just, you know, when you put everything that you have into, you know, making sure that everything is done right, you know, because I did things right with her. I ate right like I was supposed to while I was pregnant. I ate all healthy things. I did everything right. And even when she was a child, you know, I did everything right that I knew to do as a mother, you know. So, but it's, you know, then you have someone who just feels like
Takes it all away, huh?
and don't really give a blank about what they did. to your loved one.
And,
You know.
and every family is at risk of this every day. We all use the roads. We're all think about how much time we drive, right? And every single time that we're on the road, whether we know it or not, there are people around us that are drunk, that are on drugs, that are putting all of us at risk. And that's why we want to be loud about this, and we want to get the message out, and we want to do our best to try to affect change. That's why we're working on a bill that's named after my dad to, try to help hold drunk drivers accountable. And we're going to be doing a whole episode on that very soon. And so we really, really want to thank you for coming on the podcast, for sharing your story, because it's not easy, and we're going to continue to try to keep our community safe the same way that our loved ones did. And although we're not law enforcement, this is an amazing way that we can get the word out, and that we can be, affect change the way that they did. And so, again, we really, really want to thank you for being here and for sharing your story. And we're hoping that people will listen to this and spread it, and, maybe they'll think twice before going out and drinking.
Yes.
And